Welcome, 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 one and all. If you're watching this on catch up, then you'll probably catch the very beginning. People don't seem to catch the first few seconds live. But I am your host, Adam Steele, and with me today is not, despite the words underneath, this is not Liam, this is Jeremy. Why don't you introduce yourself, Jer?
All right, my name is Jeremy Varao. I don't know. I'm a guy who makes videos poorly. Some people seem to like them, but yeah, guitar player, sometimes multi-instrumentalist, and I just love gear, love playing music, and happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for co-hosting. So
Sure.
Jeremy's from Dunkys and Demos, and releases videos very frequently. Sometimes it really surprises me how quickly you can turn around some of this stuff, because you get some demos out way before I do. It's really it's really impressive.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of catch as catch can. Unfortunately for me, I have that curse of a standard square gig. So I have stuck in corporate middle management. I shouldn't say stuck. I love my job, but so it's kind of between full 50 plus hour a week schedule and family commitments. It is hard sometimes to get stuff in. So I kind of go through a bit of a drought, and then all of a sudden you'll just see a whole bunch of stuff just pop out. But it's fun. It's a great way to stay creative and keep the faculties sharp. I don't gig as much as I used to, and so this is really my opportunity to just stay creative, keep myself playing music, and have some fun, just getting into some cool gear.
Yeah, but you do play quite a lot live though now. I mean, you're playing with a Kiss tribute.
Yeah.
No, I've just seen the new thing with the new, is it Joan Jett?
Joan Jett tribute as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've been in Las Vegas for 20 years now. And in the last year, I've probably been more musically productive or just working than the previous 19. So yeah, we have a Kiss tribute that we do. We are the only working Kiss show in the casinos here in Las Vegas. Started back in June of last year. It was a 6-month kind of trial run. They had the option to pull out at any time, and they've kept us around. So they re-signed us for another 6 months, and it looks like that's going to happen again. People seem to be enjoying it. It's just a lot of fun. I grew up listening to Kiss. Kiss is the reason I play music. I am just a huge avid Kiss fan, and people can Kiss is a very polarizing band. People seem to either love them or hate them. And I'm a guy who loves them. Ace Frehley. I got Kiss Alive. Sorry, I'm a talker. I'll just warn you now.
That's all right. This being a podcast, talking is what we do.
Over here.
Carry on.
Yeah. So I got Kiss Alive and Hotter Than Hell for Christmas from my mom when I was in first grade. And when my brother got For Those About to Rock and something else, maybe Van Halen 1. We got him on record. And as soon as first of all, I will tell you, the back cover of Hotter Than Hell scared the crap out of me, because there's like naked women covered in blood, with where Peter Criss's picture is. And I was like, oh gosh, I blacked it out with a marker. And now I'm kind of like, oh, I wish I didn't ruin that. But I heard Kiss Alive, and I just heard the guitars and heard the energy and just heard the crowds. And I was like, that has got to be the greatest job in the world. That's what I want to do. I want to be the guy playing the guitar solos. So, that was really what pushed me into wanting to play guitar. And, it just never went away. And it's like every time I listen to that album, it still is great, even though, the veil had been lifted and to find out it's really a studio album and they recorded it, in an empty arena and it's all tracked and what have you. But, it's just amazing that, that it feels as great to me when I listen to it now as it did back then. But never was there a time where I thought I would be, one of these guys putting on the makeup and doing the outfits. But, this opportunity came up. My buddy of mine started up this show with this guy, Scott Griffin. Scott is one of the guitar players for LA Guns. He's the Paul in our show. And, my buddy was like, hey, do you want to do Ace? I'm like, it sounds like a lot of work. And I never did the makeup before and this and that. And then, one day it was just like, yeah, what the hell? And it just worked out, and it's going really well. And then from there, through some of the subs that we use in Vegas, because if you're in a Vegas show, you got to have subs. I ended up getting into another Kiss tribute, so I'm doing two. I do a band called Sin City Kiss also, which is probably, in my opinion, one of the finest Kiss tributes working right now. But it's just a lot of fun. I get to pay homage to the band that really started my musical journey and just kind of whet my appetite for playing music. So it's awesome. I oddly I see it as an honor to be able to put the makeup on and go out there and just do what I believe is my best representation of that stuff.
Amazing. And somehow you still seem to find time to make gear demos in the middle of it. That'd drive me insane, but yeah, there you go.
It's and this, man. I mean, working in the studio and doing all the stuff that you do, you come up with you kind of get a template, you get a format. I can run home. I probably shouldn't say this. I don't know if I should say this. I can run home on a lunch break, get something filmed, and then, when I get home from work, edit it up and usually get something done pretty quickly. I wish I had more time to sit and do a full production of things and get my camera angles just right. But, where there's a will, there's a way.
Hey, it may surprise you. So, some of the videos that I do, I put a lot of time in, but some of them, because of time constraints, like it's the same for everybody. It might surprise you with some of them just how tight those deadlines really are.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Or sometimes, like, because I've been doing this not just with the YouTube channel, but with media company. Actually, I'm wearing the T-shirt today for Banter Media. I've been doing it over 10 years. You learn little tricks, like today I'm going to film all the close-ups for 10 videos, and I've got an hour to do that.
Yeah.
And then so
Yeah, that was the thing. I thought for some reason, I believe I came up with that idea the other day. Like, it was my idea. No one else ever thought of it. One day I was like, why don't I just film all of the knob turnings of 10 pedals? Just do all those parts. Remember what shirt I wore so I could switch it out. And, and then just, put them up at some kind of regular cadence. But apparently I'm not that smart, and other people have figured that out some time ago.
Magic of cinema, dude. Magic of cinema.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so, talking of the magic of cinema, coming up tonight, we are talking about Behringer and their new DAW. Apparently, they are making one.
What?
Yeah. So there's that. There's quite a few news articles that we'll skim over about the big news at the moment with this illness that everybody has. I'm not going to drop the name of it because YouTube's demonetization is terrible. There's a whole new Fender guitar, which is old but new again. And Native Instruments have decided to drop support for a lot of their old stuff and are now in trouble and are backpedaling. So we're going to talk about all of that and more tonight after the intro. Roll the intro! And cut back to us. And as the sign said, we are brought to you through you on Patreon. So watching the video, give us a like. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do. And just that last bit of housekeeping, if you look at patreon.com/HotPoleStudios, you can check that out and help us to make more videos like this. Now, enough of the advertising stuff. So let's talk about, well, how have you been? Because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty run down with something that's not the thing that's in the news.
Right. So I will tell you, I've been okay, and I will cough intermittently. Just to be warned, I have had this cough since NAMM. So pre this thing that people are talking about. But yeah, it just won't go away. But I'm pretty good. Actually, this is the first year that I got sick from NAMM. I went to NAMM, last 3 years, and was relatively unscathed when I got back, outside of some water weight from eating crappy food the whole time. But I did come back not feeling so hot for a bit. But yeah, it went away. It was fine. But this cough is just kind of hanging around. But it's not that thing. I assure you.
Good,
but,
good.
No, good. Doing the Kiss shows, trying to get content out. working on a couple of things in partnership with Line 6, their marketplace, just kind of really just trying to grow the channel this year. That's really been my focus is how upping the content and the cadence by which I'm putting stuff out. Doing family stuff. I've got kids that need tending to, and my wife and I just bought a new house, kind of spur of the moment, out in the country, and which was, literally the fastest home buying process I've ever been part of. But so yeah, it's just a lot of changes, but just trying to stay productive, man. How about you? You always seem to have stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, since I got back from NAMM, it's funny, I think at the time I was the only one because there were three of us, I was the only one who wasn't really ill. But then because I've got a child that's just under 2, I've already had all of that.
Sure, yeah.
Because she goes to nursery, puts her hands in her mouth, and then spreads them on her friends, and brings it all home.
Yeah, so much put her hand in your mouth.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi, Daddy. Blah. Oh, before you've had chance to go, please don't. It's already too late. So yeah, Liam and Charlie came home and they were in bed for like a week.
Oh goodness.
Really kind of totaled them, and I kind of got away with it until a little bit later when something new came along.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, oh dear. One of our regular viewers, we have for some reason most of our regular viewers are all called David, so we have the Council of Daves, and one of the Davids has a suspected case of what at his work.
Goodness.
Oh great. Oh dear.
Yeah, I've got someone at work that went to go get checked out yesterday. He called in, and one of my employees, and he has not been back to work since. I know he went to the hospital, so we're waiting to hear what's going on there. But I will say, it's crazy how much the world is kind of shutting down right now. I mean, you look at least in America, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, all these guys, suspending seasons, and we're waiting to hear now what's going on with the NFL, right? I mean, thankfully the season doesn't start till the preseason will start in August, but they got the draft coming up here in Las Vegas, so waiting to see how that's going to be affected. I would assume they'll still be able to have the draft, but maybe it won't be open to the public, or we'll just have to see. But in a service town like Las Vegas, it's definitely having a huge effect on us for travel and bookings and those kind of things.
Yeah, well, it's affecting the whole of Europe as well. I mean, Italy's essentially closed.
Yeah, right. They just hung the sign on the door, can't come in.
Pretty much. So a lot of the bands that were either touring Europe or going to tour Europe have all said, well, they're not letting us in. We'd be losing so much money. We just can't do this.
Right.
So because of that, the knock-on effect is the tour gets cancelled. Even if say half of the venues were like, yeah, come in.
Right.
The other half saying, well, you can't do the show. I mean, some of them you can't even get in the country, let alone to the show.
It's crazy, right? So what's interesting, also, my wife and I were listening to NPR this morning, and one country standing strong is Pakistan with their cricket tournaments. They continue to plan to host this big cricket tournament thing, and they tens of thousands of people expected to go, and they are sticking at it. So I don't know if you give them a kudos or you say you guys are insane, but either way they're all in.
Yeah. Well, I suppose a lot of countries have already been through this kind of thing so many thousand times that they're just going, well, what's new about this one?
Right. Yeah.
Because it is just an illness.
Right.
Yeah. In one perspective, I mean, sure, it's not great. It's never great when you've got something like this, but it does seem like it's been blown out of some proportion.
Yeah, I would agree, and most folks that I talk to, people I consider, of average intelligence, seem to feel the same way, and it's like, I've never seen. I mean, I'm an old man, Adam. I remember what the Zika thing, the bird flu, the Y2K. We looked all through all of these things that were going to end the world, but all of a sudden, this is the one. This is the one that the world is like hanging its hat on, and apparently, you can't buy water or toilet paper anymore. The world is out of water and toilet paper.
Yeah, that fascinates me.
Are you guys going through that as well?
Yep. Can't find a single roll in. Water's not an issue for us because as a country we're kind of set for water.
Yeah, you got that covered.
Yeah, but yeah, the roll they've gone. It's crazy.
I said Charmin has now become the Cabbage Patch Kid of this generation, right? Like grandmothers are fighting each other in the aisles to get that double quilted goodness.
Wow.
Crazy.
It's insane. I just don't get why that's so important that people didn't have some in a cupboard anyway.
Right. That one thing, I don't get it. I mean, we stock up for the month. We're pretty good, and I have a very large collection of socks, so I'm not worried about it. If I run out of the roll, I have a backup plan. But no, it's really interesting that in hand sanitizer, the hand sanitizer thing. First of all, I keep telling people if you're that dependent on hand sanitizer now, you're never going to survive the zombie apocalypse, right? When that goes down, you're done for. If you can't live through this without hand sanitizer, you'll never survive that. But these are all most of the people I know that are so freaked out about, germ contaminant or whatever. And I guess I get it, but these are people that I have spied not washing their hands after going to the bathroom. All I'm saying is, why now, right? Why is hand health important to you now that you're going to buy all the hand sanitizer?
Yeah, something that's I don't know, got me for a long time because I work in live sound on the evenings. Mm-hmm. I'm sound guy, but I've also been a chef and a barman, and I'm really on the whole personal hygiene thing because that's how I'm trained, right? Sure. But like the bar where I work, I'll keep one of the hand pump soaps on the sink in the bar, and then we'll put one in the men's toilets. And I personally will use as much soap in a night as all the men in the building.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, come on, and I'm not being OCD about this.
Exactly. Yeah, I always say, like, when I go, to use the restroom, here's what me and a couple of buddies of mine, we've worked together for a long time. We always give people what we call the popcorn test. Basically, like if I'm in the restroom, like I'm scrubbing in when I might as well be going to do surgery when I wash my hands after I go to the bathroom, right? Because again, you want to make sure you're clean.
Yeah.
But then you see the guy that that works in the office with you, and he'll come in and just do like the little splash of water and walks out and wipes it on his hands. The popcorn test means no, you will never share popcorn with me. You will never put your hands in my communal food, right? We're not sharing M&Ms. You fail the popcorn test. So that's how we always know we'll tip each other off. This guy's off the popcorn list.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
It's weird.
My general rule is trust nobody.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
So I was doing some sound work on Tuesday, and at the end of the night, barman pours me a pint. He's a fairly clean guy, no problem. A girl I'm talking to goes to take a little bit of my pint because it's the end of the night, and I'm like, no, you don't. Polite smile, not a chance.
Yeah, for sure. So, but now, is this someone that you knew, or just some random young lady was like, I'm gonna drink some of your beer?
Somewhere in between. It's someone I know, but don't. Sure. Yeah, not someone that I would normally, like my partner. We've been together 7-8 years. If she grabs my drink, I don't even get a say. Yeah.
But it's weird. It's my kid. It's funny. I have kids. They're 17 and 20 now.
Right.
But my wife is the only person I will ever allow to share a beverage. Like my son would come and like if I had a drink, he would take a sip off it, and I'd just be like, just keep it. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, just keep it. I don't want it now. Like it's just it's weird. I made these children, but them touching my beverage nauseates me. I can't do it.
Oh, it makes sense. I mean, you don't know where they've been and what they've been doing.
I don't know where they've been. They're dirty. Kids are dirty. They're just disgusting little things.
That's what kids do, right?
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm the same. If someone tries to take my drink, I just smile and start sharpening knives.
Yeah. Got one right in the back pocket.
Yeah. So that brings us neatly onto the news. So Music Tech have a few articles on this. Come on. Who makes live? Ableton. I was about to say Apple then, but Ableton's Loop has been postponed. It was supposed to be happening in April. Apparently, they want to keep the same program and push it back a year, which literally means it's cancelled, but they don't want to say it.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, I think postponed is the new cancelled. Because I'm seeing this a lot in the news. The Game Developer Conference, GDC, that's a big one. That's been made online only or postponed. So basically, all the seminars are all online and everything else just isn't happening.
Yeah.
There's Berlin, as in Berlin in Germany.
Yeah.
It's closed major venues, banning gatherings of over 1,000. The Synthplex, which was supposed to happen in 2 weeks, which is all the modular synth nuts, that's been postponed 6 months. That's LA-based Synthplex. I wonder if it's going to affect anything that goes on at the LA, Anaheim Convention Center.
Oh man, I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine so.
Imagine if this had happened at the start of January. NAMM would not have happened.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you think? I mean, that's such a hub for people from all over the world to come to, right? In one confined space. That that would have been definitely would have got shut down.
Yeah, and the last news article is South by Southwest has been actually cancelled. Yeah. Apparently, NME, the news, NME, New Music Express. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were the publication in England. I didn't know how far they'd spread. I'm guessing they're fairly global. They have launched an initiative to support artists who've been affected by the South by Southwest cancellation.
Oh.
Apparently, they're going to do things like put on local shows and have them filmed and recorded showcases for bands to be published live, which it sounds like it's something that's going to work well for them, because then NME have got these exclusive shows for all their own personal content, but
under the auspices of being good citizens, right?
Right, but as long as it helps everybody out, I don't see any problem in it. But you do have to have that little cynicism where you're like, yeah, this is to help yourselves, right?
Yeah, right. You're probably going to get more out of this than I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if that goes well, I mean, they might do a similar thing next year and make it kind of, NME Live Week or something.
Right,
I don't know. Right.
And now you can buy into it.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Sell packages for bands.
Yeah. Free hand sanitizer.
Exactly right.
Commemorative hand sanitizer.
That's right. What color would it be?
Well, NME was traditionally black and red.
Oh. The most evil of hand sanitizers.
Yeah, the Darth Maul of hand sanitizers. Pretty badass. You brand it as
You know what? I would do it just for the hand sanitizer. I don't even care. You don't even have to show my band. I just want that cool hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Hey, product placement. It's amazing what you can do.
Yeah.
So, let's draw a close to that news subject, because it's crazy, but that is kind of what it is. So, let's have a look at something else. A group called Polyend have revealed a hardware sequencer called the Tracker. Do you ever use trackers when you were younger? You ever a synth guy at all?
No. I appreciate the cool sounds of synths, but anything with more than 4 knobs, it was not happening, because I was not smart enough to negotiate the obstacle, as they say.
Fair enough. So back in the day, and we're talking like Amiga, Commodore Amiga, that kind of era. Yeah. Sure. If you wanted to write music for games, that kind of thing, you only had, I think it was 4 or 6 channels you could use, because the chip in it could only do so many things.
Sure.
So you programmed it using a program called a tracker, where you go, step 1, you play this, you play this, you play that. Step 2, and then you would do step by step by step instructions.
So kind of like using the piano roll.
Kind of, but
ish.
Yeah, ish, but just way more, even more simple than that. where you could see all the channels at once, but it would literally be next step. Yeah. So the lead instrument now plays this note, the bass now plays this note, or maybe the drums hang for a second while we do, that kind of thing. And there are some very, very clever things that I've seen done with trackers. I've played with them myself, but some of these real experts could do things like with a tracker, you could change one channel so it's like it's a drum, then it changes to be a bass for a split second, then it's back to being a kick drum, then it's back to being the bass. So you've only got like 4 channels or 6 channels, but one channel might be going boom ticka boom ticka boom, doing all of that on one channel.
That's cool.
So that's how they got these really, really clever, real nice soundtracks on some of these games back in the day. Is guys would use tracker programs to write all this stuff. And then when they're done, they make it into some sort of code that goes into the game. That bit, I don't really know how, but I know that's what they did. And so, that's kind of a thing that was a period in time. And then as hardware got more and more powerful, we got used to modern digital audio workstations and piano rolls. Like you say, they were kind of the next step, the next thing. Like the old Cubase back in the early 90s. Sure. Cubase originally didn't even do audio, it was just MIDI. Yeah, and it was all black and white, but the layout wasn't too different from what we know now.
Yeah.
And then from their Cubase SX, they added audio in, it got really good, and that's roughly the time that I started learning how to use it. So like 2000, 2001. And I mean, everything's grown from there, but what we know as the modern audio world hasn't really changed.
Yeah.
But this way of working, the tracker, this company are bringing it back as a hardware unit.
Oh.
So
cool.
It's one of those things that I think a lot of producers now, sometimes myself included, we have this complaint where, it's option paralysis. You got too many choices. What do I do? And you can sit there for hours going, well, what about this sound? No, what about that sound? Whereas with a tracker, you go, okay, well, this is my bass. Boom, 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 boom. And 3 minutes later, you've got the bass of a track.
Right, sure.
And so I really like the idea of some sort of hardware like this that can really streamline your work.
No, definitely. And I will say, and I'm absolutely like guilty of this in my productions. I mean, I do so much stuff just in the box because it's convenient, right? But there really, there's just something about hardware, right? And that's one of the things, like especially for me for recording, when it comes down to guitar sounds, bass sounds, those kind of things. It's like I generally still love hardware. I love an amp. I love turning the knobs, finding the sound, seeing the thing, holding the thing. I don't know. So I think that's cool for something like that to come out as a hardware unit as opposed to just kind of something in the box, right? Because again, I think when even though the kind of the world is your oyster with hardware, you can do so much with it. When you get something in software, you do get that option paralysis because you can do so much with so many different things, and you automatically start trying to like chain things up with other things and connect things to other things. Whereas you've got this dedicated piece of hardware, it does this thing, and you really can focus on just it, right, and get your part down with that thing, and actually get something committed to tape or committed to audio, as opposed to just really just mucking about for just what can be hours on end, just trying to get the right sound to start the thing.
Right. It's funny how a lot of my production techniques with bands are exactly that they go, what do we do? And I go, well, here's a drum sound, here's a great guitar sound, here's a bass sound, play. Like,
right, exactly.
20 minutes, get it all up, go. Then, when we've got something down, then I start asking the questions, but I don't spend 2 days going, oh, well, should we use this plugin? Right. No. Start with a thing and go, well, this is the thing we're doing.
No, totally. And it's like you just get in the way of yourself being productive the more you try to, like, it's like you're trying to get the score of the test without actually taking the test.
Yes. Exactly that. Yeah. It's funny. So, let's move from this pretty cool thing to the headline of the show, which is Behringer, everybody's favourite or least favourite company. Every week we end up talking about Behringer in the news, so we've started to call it Behringer Corner, because it's kind of funny how we don't intend to do it, but they do something almost every week without fail, whether it's a new synth or they're in the news for a bad reason or a good reason, or they're just so flipping active.
Right. And again, Polaroid, they're like the Kiss of the music manufacturing world, right?
Right.
People love them, right?
Yeah, nobody's really on the fence about Behringer.
Right.
They're either like, never heard of them, or they make really cheap stuff which I love, or they make really cheap stuff which I hate.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. So, it's in the last few years, now they own all their own factories. They own so many companies as well now that they pretty much have the world at their feet. Sure. And it's only a few months ago that me and Liam were joking on the podcast saying they're going to replace Pro Tools. And here it is.
It's called pre-tiles?
Pretty much.
Oh, gosh.
Behringer pre-tiles.
That's fantastic.
So a little while back, they asked a question on their Facebook that was, if we designed our own DAW, what features would you like to have?
Uh-huh.
And so that set a lot of kind of buzzing going, but it was just a question at the time. So it could have been a question for any reason, because they also own TC Electronic, they also own Clark Technic, they also own Midas. They could have been doing something under one of those brands, right?
Sure.
Like TC Electronic, it wouldn't be too strange for them to do that kind of thing.
No, totally.
But they decided to go the whole hog. They've made a Facebook post now that says, it's now official. We will be creating our own Music Tribe DAW. Music Tribe is the umbrella company that owns them all.
Mm.
It says, this is a massive undertaking which will take at least 18 months. And for that purpose, we've now assembled a large development team. So they're serious. It's not just one guy.
Yeah.
It will also include samples, which I'm not too hot on, but that is what it is. That's fine. And VSTs, plugins, plus connections to third-party VSTs. That's great for me, because that means they're not excluding everybody.
Right.
Which was always my issue with something like Pro Tools First. I don't know if you...
Yeah.
Yeah, you know Pro Tools First?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's got 4 channels or whatever it is at a time, and you can't use anybody else's plugins in it unless you buy them specifically through their store, which is a big no-no.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so carrying on. Our goal is to include the very best features available, including multiple user interfaces for both recording and DJ?
What?
Okay. And then they go on to say that the opportunity is that they have no legacy platform to maintain, so they could basically do whatever they like, which makes sense because they don't own something like Pro Tools or Cubase or whatever. They don't have to do things the way everybody else does them.
Right.
And if they get this right, this could be huge.
Oh, absolutely, because it'll also be $4, right? So
yeah,
it's
right.
No, and I will say, I mean, I have been, when I first started recording, I started on Pro. It was a light version of Pro Tools that came with my audio interface, and I was able at least to get in there and start messing around. But I've been, I then jumped to GarageBand, which pushed me to Logic Pro. And I've been on Logic Pro for like the last 6 years, probably. And I think I started on Logic Pro 9.
Ooh, well, you made it through to the good stuff then.
Yeah. And I love Logic Pro X. I'm an Apple guy. Feel free to just turn unsubscribe to my channel now. But I love Apple stuff.
It's funny. Everyone thinks I'm anti-Apple because I'm quite a strong PC user. I'm not.
Yep.
To me, they're very similar, and if you like one or the other, that's absolutely fine.
Sure. Yeah. So Pro Tools, I mean, obviously it's an industry standard. I get it. But I always look around to see what other DAWs are doing. Like I know guys that are really big fans of Reaper. And then I think the one DAW that always intrigued me the most, if it wasn't Logic, is what PreSonus has been doing with Studio One. I think Studio One it's a great looking interface anyway, but I had heard that there were some challenges around plugins with them as well. So the Behringer thing, I'll be honest with you, I'm very interested to see what they come up with and what that looks like, because again, like you said, there's no legacy platform to maintain or to try to convince people I'm not screwing up what you already love about this, right? Coming out with something fresh and new, it could be cool.
Well, here's something for you. You joke that it's going to be $4. The next line in the official statement was, best of all, the DAW will be free of charge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So then you ask the question, well, what's in it for them? What's in it for Behringer?
Right.
I think the answer is simple. It's world domination.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's the only way, if they do this right, to completely supplant Pro Tools, is to have this in every home.
Absolutely. I mean, because you've now got the thing that everybody can afford.
Yeah.
And, when you look at how good free software has been, like with the amp sims from companies like Ignite or whomever, or the Lapel plugins, like there's all this great stuff, this fantastic sounding stuff that's just out there for free. If you've got a solid, stable host to load the stuff up in, I mean, that's brilliant. And at the end of the day too, now you've got this great, potentially, hopefully great DAW that everyone can afford. And oh, by the way, we make these super reasonably priced, 8-channel interfaces that have Midas pre's in them, right? So maybe you should look at those while you're using this very nice new DAW that we've just given you.
Exactly.
So I think it's definitely a good way to upsell, right? You give it to them for free. It's the gateway.
It's funny, one of the guys in chat saying, well, a lot of the comments on that statement were, why would you do it? It's a money pit in a saturated market. And the thing is, it's a money pit to a lot of companies. To Behringer, it's probably a drop in the ocean.
Exactly.
Their company makes so much money.
Right.
They can do it they could probably never make money on it if they so choose.
Sure.
And it still turn out well for them, because if everybody uses it, it's free advertising.
Exactly. And there will absolutely be waste. I would bet one of my toes on the fact that there will be some type of way to have a in-app purchases to do things, right? Whether it's to buy plugin. Because here's the thing: if they give you a free DAW, I would think that the next logical step would be to create plugins, right?
Yeah.
Low cost plugins, things that are competitively priced with other things in the market that, again, I mean, like you said, they own TC. They could start pumping out, reverb plugins, delay plugins, all those kinds of things.
Yep.
Start thinking about where it could go. You look at the Plugin Alliance and those kind of things. You got companies like Brainworks developing exclusive stuff. I bet people would be willing to develop low cost plugins to go along with this format, because again, it's just about saturation. It's about getting eyes on, as many eyes as possible on this thing. You might have spent a few bucks to develop, but yeah, I think it's incredibly smart of them, actually.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Like TC Electronics, they make some really good sounding effects, really good pedals, and they continue to improve. And yet, because Behringer own them, they don't have to ask for permission, they don't have to reverse engineer anything.
Yep.
They can literally just take that code and then make it PC and Mac compatible, which probably doesn't take much in terms of just changing the compiler, because again, they own the source code. So they just change that.
And they've already got their own editor. The GUI's already established, right? I mean, they've got iOS and desktop editors. They're already there.
Yeah. And so they just do that and press a button and go.
Yep.
And all the synths, because Behringer are synth nuts.
Sure.
Uli Behringer himself, the CEO, he's a keyboard guy.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that they've been doing all these keyboard clones recently. Don't know if you've seen any of those. Like, they're doing desktop synths. The ARP 2600, which is the synth from the 70s that wasn't a Moog. They've literally just brought one out for something like $400.
Right, it's crazy.
Yeah, and so again, they've got all the schematics, all the hardware, all the everything. And so it's going to be a real shock to the industry, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It is certainly something to keep eyes on for sure.
Yeah, it's something I'm going to have to keep an eye on, because if it's good, I'm probably going to end up using it. I mean,
and that's the thing, really, isn't it? People, you've got loyalists and people that are just diehard connected to, like, their identity is wrapped up around what they're using, whether it's in their studio or their guitar rig, or this. It's like people, there's just such loyalty to certain things that, like, you let that get in the way of something else that might be really good, right? And here's the thing: if it's a great DAW or great DAW, I'm always open to try something new. Like, I feel like you have to be.
That's how I ended up using Reaper. I mean, I'm known as the Reaper guy now.
Okay.
On day one, I didn't go, I'm going to use Reaper and this is going to be my hill that I'm going to die on.
Right.
I was using Pro Tools, I was using Cubase, and they weren't quite doing the things that I wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. And so there was an article in Sound on Sound magazine, which, is the Bible for us guys.
Sure.
And so I thought, I'll give that a go, and tried it. And then I was like, yeah, I'm sold, because it did everything that I wanted it to do and didn't take away from me what I already did in Pro Tools and Cubase.
Sure.
Which was always my issue with things like, PreSonus Studio One, or what else was I trying at the time? Cakewalk Sonar. Things like that. They took away features that I was becoming reliant on.
Sure.
Which meant that I would have had to completely change my entire way of working to work for them. Right. Whereas Reaper didn't. It was just like, you want to do this? Here's a button. You can do that. But also, here's another way. We've got them both. And so if Behringer do that with it, so if there's anything you can do in Pro Tools or Cubase or Ableton Live, if that's all in there, that's going to be a big conversion factor.
No, absolutely, right. Because again, at the end of the day, people want ease of implementation, right? And they want to know that they can build a workflow that works for them, that they're not stuck having to do something this way, right? Because if this way is not conducive for how they work, and that it is, right? Like, recording engineering is a very, very personal thing.
Yeah.
And so you have to give people that flexibility. You just do. So yeah, they've got, there's a lot of potential for them to have a huge win for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be something to keep a big eye on. Sure. But yeah, I reckon Q3 2021, something big's going to happen. And it's it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, it's interesting we were saying that Behringer are doing this essentially for themselves. Someone asked them a question on the Facebook post of basically that, and they replied with, sometimes you just invest in your customers without a direct return on investment. We're determined to make this a great success. So yeah, they've got big plans.
That's well said.
Yeah. So really looking forward to seeing those big plans come to fruition.
For sure.
Now, something that's a little more up your alley, guitar-based, because I know we talk a lot of tech on this show. But let's talk about something... we just had a question come up in chat, which is perfect for when we finish the news. So it's something to do with the Helix. Yeah, so we'll come straight back to that in a little while. Yeah. So Fender recently did a custom shop guitar called the Marauder. And it turns out it was a model from the 60s that never really got made. And so it's going to be making a comeback. Beyond a one-off custom shop artist model, it's actually going to be a new guitar. It looks kind of like a cross between a Mustang, a Jag-Stang. It's got a little bit of the shape of a jazz bass to it. It's kind of offset. I'm not sure. It's not to be confused with the Gibson Marauder.
Sure.
But it looks like they're going to be making this. I don't know how well you can... I'm going to try and zoom in. There we go. On that body shape, because that seems really interesting to me, that it's got that extended tailpiece. It's kind of Jaguar, Jazzmaster-ish kind of thing.
Right.
But it's got humbuckers as well, and it's got quite a few controls. Apparently, there's an inbuilt delay circuit.
Yeah, I don't know that. So it's always interesting to me when companies put effects into the guitars. It's kind of like, I know a guy that he's got a tube screamer and something else installed into his control panel. It's hardwired to his pickups. It's the weirdest thing.
Right. Now, for the time this was made, it was some point in the 60s. I can imagine it would be kind of a delay that's a real short delay time, kind of surf rock kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd get like a TC2290, slapback delay out of that kind of thing.
Right, or nice oil can that'll let you go past 550 milliseconds.
Right. Yeah, but I think it's a really cool kind of oddity, especially for people who are going to play more vintage stuff. But my favourite recent Fender design was they called it in the Pawn Shop series. It was like a jazz bass, but as a guitar.
Oh, I don't think I saw it.
It was kind of a short run, and I absolutely loved it. I'm going to see if I can find it.
You know what I was a huge fan of? I can't remember what they're called, but they did a line of tellies that were appointed like a Les Paul custom. So dual humbucker, 4 2-volume 2-tone knobs in the kind of that 4 knob control layout, block inlays, and they looked absolutely fantastic. They did a burst one, and then they did a very cool blue, not like a Pelham blue, but it was a really nice blue. But I thought they were really cool looking tellies. Let me see if I can see what it's called.
Oh, Fender Alternate Reality.
That's it.
Let's see which one it was. Yeah, there was one in that range that just absolutely made me stop and go, oh boy, if I had money.
Yeah, that and the Parallel Universe. The Parallel Universe one.
There we go. Too. The 66. So there we go. They called it the 66. There we go.
Yeah.
So it's kind of HHS. It's got 2 Telecaster neck style pickups and then a humbucker. And it's got the plate from a jazz bass, shape from a jazz bass. Now the jazz bass is my all-time favorite body shape. Full stop.
I love a jazz bass.
Yeah, it's funny. People say to me, "Well, why don't you play a precision bass?" I'm like, "Why would I play that plank of wood?"
No, I played bass in a touring ska band, because who didn't?
Yeah,
back in the 90s. But
bass and a pick.
Yeah, right. But jazz bass. That was my bass of choice. I had a nice white jazz bass. I loved it.
Good stuff. It's funny. I played in a ska band for a long time, but I was weird. I played a 6-string bass in a ska band. Who does that?
No, well, you apparently.
Well, apparently, yeah.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun, man. We toured all over. We played with. We played with everybody. I mean, if there was a big ska band working, Real Big Fish, Buck 09, Less Than Jake, Goldfinger. We did a bunch of regional shows with in Florida. We were kind of like one of the ska punk bands in Florida. So if a decent band came through, we would always at least be on the bill. I got to play. It was fantastic. Played with the Specials when they did a run through Florida. So that was cool. But no, it's probably the most fun I've had gigging and touring was, going to college towns and playing at ska band, man. We had some experiences for sure.
Yeah, it's always good fun. I mean, you know what you're going to get with a ska show.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I kind of miss it sometimes. But yeah, we were slightly odd that we were kind of like a trio and a brass section.
Okay.
So because we only had one guitar, I'd be really filling the sound out, which sometimes led to some very interesting parts for ska.
Oh, I bet. To me, I think the bass players, and I was not one of them. So I think the best compliment I ever got as a bass player when I was playing in this band is that someone compared me to Matt Freeman from Rancid, and I love he's basically a guitar player on a bass,
Yeah.
I think like the bass player is like the unsung hero of ska music, because just you've got to be a good bass player. It's just with the most of the drum patterns that's traditional ska bands use, not super complex, not super diverse, but it's the bass that's just carrying that music. It just really is.
You ever try playing Less Than Jake? It's like woof.
Yeah, no, those guys are so cool. I mean, we played with those guys for years and years and years before they kind of broke. But those guys work, man. They were one of the hardest working bands I've ever had the pleasure of just dealing with. In Florida, just had an amazing ska scene. We just really did. We had a lot of great bands in Florida.
Good stuff. Where I'm from in the north of England, we had none of that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the south of England had the whole two-tone ska, bands like the Specials. Yeah. Sure. But especially 20 years on the other side of the country, nothing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we were pretty much the only ska band for 100 miles, which in England is like 1,000 miles.
Well, so did that work in your favor, at least?
Kind of. Yeah, it kind of worked out. That we if ever there was a ska show, we were on it. We were a band called Wobbly Bob, which is very English indeed.
Yeah.
Sure. But, yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. If ever we ended up on any kind of bill. I think not long after I left the band, because I moved to run my own studio, they did end up playing a few shows with the Specials, so it just kind of, momentum grew and grew and grew. And it's a lot of fun. I do kind of miss it.
Yeah, it was good fun. It's pretty cool. I just saw a flyer for a ska festival here in Vegas, and a couple of bands that we used to play with. A band called The Independents. They're kind of like if the Misfits were a ska band.
Right.
I remember playing with those guys. I think out of South Carolina, I believe. But I remember playing with them just a whole bunch, and they're playing this thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I left that band in like 1998, and I remember playing with the Independents back in '98, and here they are coming to Las Vegas. 22 years later. It's crazy.
It's funny how it all comes around.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So last news article, and then we'll get back to the closing section of the show, which for those of you watching at home is the viewers' questions section. If you've got anything you'd like to ask me or Jeremy about pretty much anything, then 5 minutes from now will be the time. So start typing, and by the time you hit enter on your well-structured, well-thought-out question, we'll be ready to answer. So, last news article, Native Instruments, who make complete, all the contact instruments, all that kind of stuff, all your synth goodness, but also all the really heavy sample libraries for keys, orchestras, all that kind of stuff. They were going to basically not keep up any updates and essentially drop all support for their old stuff. They reported that they were going to, at the end of May, pretty much drop anything. The old software they used was called the Service Center, which for older versions of their software, that's what you use to install it, get license done, all that kind of jazz. And they basically said, yeah, we're just going to stop supporting that because it's old now. And apparently there's been a huge backlash, which they did not expect. So they're going to be pretty much backtracking on that. And apparently they're going to reevaluate and try and come up with possible workarounds.
That's it's interesting that it's good that they're reconsidering their position on that statement, because I mean, you think about it. Like I went back through a couple of weeks ago and pulled up some now I've never been a big Native Instruments guy. Contact always just seemed to never work right for me on my machines. I know a lot of guys use it with great success. I just don't happen to be one of them. But when I go back through with plugins and things like that, you pull up old sessions where you want to remix or remaster something or re-record parts or tweak things and just play around with them. I would think that not supporting those older plugins, I mean that just ruins the ability for people to kind of go back and retweak that stuff, right?
Mm. Well, that's it. I mean, a lot of the support that they were dropping as well, I think the problem with Contact especially is that unlike plugins from a lot of other people, like, let's say you had a synth and then you came out with a new version of the synth and then another new version. 5-10 years down the line, you drop support for the old versions. Why? Because you've got new versions. If you're paying for it, you get the new version.
Right.
With Kontakt, there are so many third-party sample libraries that other companies have made that you use in Kontakt. That's going to cause some real issues because people are going to be holding on to versions of software that hasn't been made in a few years.
Right.
And so it might be a sound that, I don't know, let's say your album revolves around that kind of sound.
Sure.
And suddenly the company who make the host for your sound are going, well, no, you can't have that anymore. That's a big problem.
Totally.
And it's a problem that other companies just don't have.
Sure.
But it's such a tricky balance because to me there is going to be a logical point where you go, this stuff is old, man. You've got to move on.
Yeah, there is an end of life on most everything, right? And you do kind of have to accept that as a consumer as well.
But then the question is, with computing power getting bigger and bigger every day, but the demands that as audio guys, we're not putting more demand on the computers.
Right.
So how does the end of life start to stretch? Where it used to be that you got 5 years out of something because 5 years from now, if you look at a computer that you had, I don't know, let's say 15 years ago, you look at it and you go, that's a potato.
Sure.
That's useless. But even from a perspective of 10 years ago, you were probably looking at it going, that old piece of junk's worth nothing. Whereas now,
I'm using a Mac Pro trash can. It's like a mid 2013, and the thing still runs like a champ. I mean, it's got plenty of time left in it. I know guys whose whole studios are still built on like early 2000s Mac Pro towers, those big metal monstrosities, because they can fit so many hard drives in there, and they're still still upgradable. They're still viable machines. 15 years later.
Now, it's funny that you should mention those because I think that those old machines are starting to come to end of life now. But it's so much further back than you would have ever thought possible.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I mean, in 2007-ish, 2008, which is when I left university or college for our US brethren. If I'd said, I'm still using a machine from 10 years ago, people would have looked at me like, what does it run on, Steam?
Right, yeah, you got a little mouse in there and a wheel just running real fast.
Pretty much. And it's how many tracks can you record at once? 3? Maybe 4 if you overclocked it. Whereas now you're looking at a machine that's 10 years old, and if it's well maintained and looked after, you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So end of life is not what it used to be. And that raises a question with manufacturers is, are they budgeting in their prices that they charge people for the fact that they're going to need staff to support and maintain these products that are way older than you would have ever thought, but still, not left as a relic of the past?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it gets into this whole other thing that might be might be a conversation for another time, but the built-in obsolescence, right? And that's why you can buy a laptop that is fairly functional and fairly powerful for $400, right? Because they know it's built in such a way, just because it'll still work 5 years from now, the keyboard's going to be shot, and it's built in such a way that it's not repairable, or things are, so it's like I think they're getting smart to maybe how well things had been built over the last decade. So we want to make sure we don't repeat that mistake. We want to force people to have to buy something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny as well that I think that computer manufacturers, they've all kind of hit a roadblock recently. I don't know if you're aware of the whole multi-core processor thing that's happening right now. And that's a result of the fact that generally processors just aren't getting any faster.
Right.
I mean, sure, they might get 5 or 10% faster with every new series now. But do you remember in the mid-90s when you got a new processor and it was literally twice as fast as the one from last year?
Yeah, you felt the performance, absolutely.
Yeah, and that was a year on year on year, double, 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 double.
Sure.
And now we've hit that wall where we're like, ooh, 5%. It's like the only way to make it run faster now is to put 2 of them in there, or 4 of them in there, or 16 or 64 of the same thing in there. And because of that, there are limits. Like, if you've got a certain number of tracks in your project that have got these plugins that use quite a lot of power, that's cool and all, but if you get a really, really powerful computer, it's not going to use much more because of the way it all works. It's us audio guys especially, we're looking at these going, okay, and like my studio PC, I built that 2 years ago now. It might have been 3 years ago. It's got 4 cores on the processor, and I'm looking at it, and I don't max that out when I do a mix.
Yeah, no.
What do I need something new for? I mean, I'm running the latest plugins, the latest this, the latest that, because it's what I do for a living. It's what and I'm looking at all this progress and going, why should I spend more money? This machine, and again, talking about end of life.
Sure.
I'm trying to push the boundaries.
Right.
Like I'm on the other side from end of life. And I'm looking at it going, well, why should I spend money?
Exactly, yeah.
So if I'm pushing the boundaries and I'm not spending the money, who is and why?
Right.
It can get such a big rabbit hole, but it's going to be a big industry shift, I think. Because the things now in the latest version of your DAW, it's like it has to be new features. Because it's not about better performance these days.
Right. Yeah. So how do I continue to deliver in this platform that you're using? Right. Like if I literally can't make this better because it's already fantastic.
Yeah.
I have to at least do new things.
That's it. I mean, I remember going from Cubase SX2 to Cubase SX3 back in 2005. I think it was 2004, and you could feel the difference. And everything ran so much better. And I think it was Cubase 5 or 6, they added this ACO guard thing, and suddenly you could use twice as many plugins on the same machine. And so you're not buying a new computer. And that was 15 years ago. And we've not come on very far since. I mean, computers are, in terms of the horsepower, way more powerful.
Right.
But who for?
Well, no, exactly, and a lot of it it's that they're hoping that people follow that idea of owning a gun, right? They say it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? So that's the sell right there. You probably don't need all of this, but in case you do, we got you covered. Right.
And it's funny, I'm on both sides of that coin because I do quite a lot of video editing as well.
Sure.
And for me, a really powerful computer doing video, that makes sense. Because video being so large file-wise compared to audio, that can just use raw horsepower.
Totally.
That's the kind of thing where if I get a computer that's got twice as many processing cores in, I probably will get twice the performance out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's with audio, it's like me getting going from a pickup truck to a Lamborghini on the freeway. It's like, well, you speed limited, so what does this do for you?
Exactly.
And you can be like, look at me, and everybody's like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, now do something.
Yeah, you can sound really cool at the red light. It doesn't mean you get to use everything that's under the hood.
Exactly. Whereas something really demanding like video editing, that's your racetrack right there. It's like whatever you've got, foot down, go.
Yep.
Yeah.
No governor.
But it's funny. I'm going to be doing more computer building and computer focused videos this year. But some of it is going to be like, look, we don't need this.
Sure.
And it's going to be such a strange balance. Whereas in years gone by, it was, this is the value for money. This is going to get you what you need.
Yeah.
My main editing laptop died 2 days before NAMM.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know. But I had this old spare from, I don't know, 2008, 2009. I put a solid state drive in, new copy of Windows, some of the plugins and Reaper that I needed, and I flew with that to NAMM, and I recorded an entire song on the show floor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right. I recall.
Yeah, it's funny. We saw each other at NAMM for about 10 whole seconds because
that's about it. Yeah,
being dragged around that's what happens at NAMM. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, what a thing. I mean, ugh. Speaking of which, that's still not been released. That song that's going to be very, very soon. That's coming out. That's going to be my thing to edit this week because I've been laid low with some sort of cold, and so I've not done a great deal this week other than my obligations, as it were. So I'm getting back on the horse tomorrow, and I'm going to get the edit for that finished. And there's going to be a guest solo from somebody we know.
Ooh, cool! Sounds exciting.
That's you.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So yeah, and there's that. There was a guest solo from confusingly a guy also called Jeremy, but he's one of the product demonstrators for Two Notes. So
yep, Jeremy Kroll. He's a great player.
Yes, and he got 2 whole takes to jam something out on headphones with with a Marshall Plexi, which it wasn't really his tone anyway, and he still nailed it.
Yeah. I actually used that same amp for my From the Floor Captor X demo.
Right, yeah. It was a good amp.
It was a good amp.
But then it's funny. This is something that I always get with US based rather than UK. In the UK, I can walk into most guitar stores and find a vintage Marshall JMP or Plexi.
Sure.
Maybe a couple of $1,000, but it's there because in the UK they made thousands of them, and they're here. In the US, it's like it's like hen's teeth or unicorn droppings. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, a 1969 Plexi, and I'm like, yeah.
There's 5 of them down the road.
Yeah, but it's the funniest thing because to me it's like an old Mesa dual rectifier, and you're like, yeah, they're from around the corner. You can find one in every second-hand store.
Yeah,
I'm like, what?
Like angles, and angles are the PV of Europe, right? Over here, people are like, ooh, really cool. This angle popped up. And it's funny, and it's funny. Like people find a Plexi over here, like you said, a 69 Plexi, and they're like, now I got to send it off and get gutted and modded. Yeah,
but it's funny that the British thing is that it's funny we don't really do that with Plexis anyway, or Marshalls, because I don't know, maybe it's an attitude thing that the American sound is lots of gain, lots of saturation, lots of sustain from the amp. Whereas the kind of the British sound was, we'll just hit the guitar harder.
Make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, that whole kind of Paul Kossoff kind of smack the Les Paul, that's your sound.
Sure.
But it's funny, I grew up with very much the American sound, which was a real struggle in the late 90s, early 2000s as a kid with no money.
Sure.
Trying to get that kind of sound, and ended up with these multi-effects pedals that, you don't want to know some of the horrible sounds that I came up with. But it's because there was no choice, even when I had a half-decent budget. At one point, I had a Marshall half-stack from the late 80s, early 90s, as a 17-year-old kid.
Wow.
Because, I mean, it wasn't cheap, but as a 17-year-old, I'd been saving up all my money from my part-time job.
Sure.
And it was affordable.
Yeah,
for me. I think the two together was something like $1,000.
Wow.
But I always wanted a Mesa dual rectifier, but the head alone, we were talking $2,500–3,000.
Sure.
Because nobody had one secondhand because you didn't find them.
Right. Yeah. So I remember reading an article when I was in high school from the guys in Sepultura, and they were talking about the cost of getting a Marshall stack in Brazil at the time. They were paying like over 1,000% sales tax and import tax just to get the amps. And it's like, it's just crazy what people, I mean, which you take for granted, especially when you're in the country of origin, they can just walk down to any store and get whatever one you want. And then you think of like, they're trying to get a BC Rich NJ series over in Brazil at the time. It was like over $2,000, for a $400 guitar.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
But that's market forces at work, isn't it? Like,
sure, totally.
I know there was a similar story with like Sega. If you wanted a Sega Genesis from America to Brazil, it was from US to Brazil. It was something like $1,000. So they just made their own. They just made them in Brazil, and they're still one of the most popular consoles in Brazil because you can get one for $30 or whatever it is.
Sure, that's great.
Yeah,
it's like where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, that's it. Like I believe Sony make PlayStations in Brazil. It was cheaper and more successful for them to have a factory there. Sure. Because of the way the tax works in the country, like you were saying, import tax is insane.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So it's actually cheaper for them to sell. Let's say you could get a PlayStation 4 for, I don't know, $300 when they were new. They could make one in Brazil and sell it for $450 or $500, and everyone's going, "This is a bargain."
Right.
Because it's not $3,000.
Right.
It's absolute insanity.
Bonkers.
But yeah, it's always fascinated me how, some of the stuff that I've got in my studio now, I'm very lucky to have, but it's just because of proximity. Sure. And I think that's how we end up with like the British sound and the American sound and that kind of thing. It's like, well, how do you end up this way? It's because that's what I could afford at the time.
Sure. And that's what's available where I am,
Yeah, and so because it's what's available to everybody around you, right, you all develop this kind of sound.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny how it goes. But yes, from there, I mean, as a nice segue, now you can get all these sounds in a Helix.
You sure can.
Shameless plug time. So, this is something we've hinted at, we've talked about briefly, but me and Jeremy, we're working together on something that is now on the Helix. You can probably explain it better than me, so go ahead.
Okay, so I've been an avid. First of all, I will tell you this, and even the Line 6 guys know this. I was a Line 6 Helix hater at launch. I was not a fan of Line 6 amp tones, not a fan of anything they were doing. I had pods and the Pod XT and all that stuff, and it just, to me, the amp sounds were never really there. All of a sudden the Kemper comes out in 2011, and I hopped on board with there, and I was a strong Kemper user for years, and then switched over to Fractal just to try it out or whatever. And then something happened. I heard some clips of the Helix when they came out with firmware 2.0, and all of a sudden my ears perked up, and things just started sounding right. And so for the heck of it, when they announced the Helix LT, I bought one, and I'm telling you, I opened the box, plugged it in. I didn't bother with the manual because I don't read manuals because I'm a man and men don't read manuals. And so I just started whacking at it, and within 5 minutes, I had a tone that I used at a gig, not even kidding, that evening. Just dialed in 5 minutes of just playing around with it, and it just sounded phenomenal. So fast forward 2 years, and now I'm like, I have a Helix rack and controller. I've got an HX Stomp. I've got a Helix floor that I gig with every week. I'm all in on the Line 6 stuff. But one of the things that people have asked me a lot on the channel, because I do a lot of content based around the Helix. I have a series called The Idiot's Guide to the Line 6 Helix, and it's basically just step-by-step ways of starting from an empty signal chain to building up a rig and importing impulse responses and creating and saving presets and all that stuff. But I just from a beginner user's approach. People always said like, oh, you should make presets, and I was kind of like, I don't know. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also a huge amp guy. I love just the tactile nature of an amp. I love the knobs. I love the tubes. I love all of it. So I'm also a big 2-notes user, and which is how you and I got acquainted, because I happen to just use a metric ton of your cabinets that you make for 2-notes, and they're by far. And I don't say this because we're ebuds, but they're just amazing. I really, really like how you capture your cabinets, and I think they're some of the best ones in the 2-notes line. So I had this idea of hey, maybe I'll reach out. And this is how I think we even really started chatting was around this. Was I love to use your cabinets in the Torpedo Cab M with my Helix instead of using the stock cabs. So I was like, okay, he's already shooting these things. He must have IRs. He must have some kind of way of making IRs. So I had this idea of like, I'm going to reach out and see if Adam would be interested in making custom IRs for some presets that I was creating, which now has turned into the Metal Power 1 series. So what I had done is just, I guess, you can talk about your part. I just came up with these presets on the Helix, and then I loaded up Wall of Sound in Logic Pro and just loaded up my favorite cabs of yours. Like, the God's Break cab, I think, is fantastic, the MV280. The Tall Beast, the Zilla cab. I just designed my patches around those IRs, and they just sound phenomenal. They sound great. So put it out to you and say, hey, if I sent you the settings in Wall of Sound where the mics I used and where I had them positioned, would you be interested in partnering up and making some custom IRs? So here we are. We have our first pack that is up and available for the Helix and HX Stomp.
Yeah, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. It's funny to me because being primarily a bass player but also a producer, I'm chasing sounds, but it's funny, I find it difficult to actually play guitar and dial in a tone at the same time. I don't know if you've ever had that, but
no, I'm amazing at it.
No, I mean, I don't know if it's a barrier for you if you're actually playing at the time.
Yeah, but no, I do. Yeah, I sit there with my guitar on my lap. I play and I dial. I play and I dial, and it's to me, and that's one thing I really, really love about the Helix. And again, not a shameless plug. I feel like dialing in an amp tone on the Helix is as simple as dialing in a good amp tone on an amp. For me, it's super intuitive. It's not overwhelming. Some of these platforms have so much deep dive stuff that you can get into that, again, you get into that option paralysis. You're trying to get the grade on the test before you can even take it. The Helix, I mean, it just, for me personally, it just works. It's super simple. If I know an amp in the real world, I know what I want to do with it on the Helix, and I dial it in, and 9 times out of 10, it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, that's the thing for me with the Helix. I had a trial with it when it first came out, and I tried it and I liked it, but it didn't quite work for me. And it turned out it's the same for me with pretty much everything. It was the same with the pod, same with the Axe effects. It was the cab block.
Sure.
The cab blocks were never right for me. And I would end up turning off the cab block and ending up using something like Wall of Sound and then going, well, why would I use them separately? And that's what. But now, because the impulse response, the IR loader in Helix is good, it actually does its job right. That's enabled us to do this. And it's funny, I've been doing IRs since about 2007. Because it was part of a study that I was doing when I was in college about kind of virtual, sound and reverbs and all that crazy stuff. Because at the time, it just wasn't the done thing. It wasn't.
Sure.
But I did it then. It was interesting, and then I kind of left it. And so I came back to it years later.
Sure.
Because it's funny, when I wasn't in the studio, I was having to use stock IRs, and again, this is 7 or 8 years ago, and they weren't great. And I had these Zilla cabs, so I only had a couple at the time, but I had them. And the guys from Zilla, they're incredible. They're really nice guys. Everything's handmade. And I've been to their factory. I've met them a couple of times. Best people. And so I ended up, I'd been using the 2 Notes Wall of Sound, and I wasn't quite happy with their stock Marshall cabs, that kind of stuff. They were okay. They weren't Zilla. So I sent Guillaume from 2 Notes an email. This is a long time ago now. Saying, hey, I want to use your stuff. I know how to do IRs. I've got these nice cabs. Is there any way that I can get them in? And it's funny how it turned out, but at the time, he mistakenly thought I was proposing some sort of business thing. And was like, well, yeah, we can do that, but you have to be a registered company. And having had the studio for a long time, well, I just replied with, okay, well, I have a registered company, you know, I do this for a living, this is our business. And so he sends me all these forms and NDAs and that kind of stuff. I'm like, wow, okay. But because I'd done IRs before and I knew the methods and I got all that done myself, it's funny, the IRs for two notes, they're not quite the same as what you would call a traditional IR. Sure. You take your microphones and you put them in several places and you use that with their software to do some very clever scientific stuff. That is still kind of under NDA. I can't talk about that in super detail, but you don't just put your microphones in one place.
Yeah.
And so by the time, now I've got 35, 40 cabs in the two note store, which is insane. And each one of those I've done 60 something captures each. And so I've done a couple.
No, and I'm telling you, like they're really phenomenal. I mean, they're my go-tos. I mean, I use the Big Beast all the time. I love the God's Brit. I love the three of the four Tall Beast ones. Got a bunch of the 212s. I mean, I use them all the time. They really are phenomenal, and that's why, when I had to say, I was so glad that you were hip to the idea of doing these presets, because I think that even just the IRs that you sent back to me that we included in the first pack, they sound phenomenal on I'm going back some of my old presets and just subbing out the cabs for these IRs, and it just brings a whole new life to them, and they just sound fantastic. And the feedback so far on the presets has been great. I mean, it got a lot of folks hitting me up on Facebook or in the Helix groups that are just really are really enjoying the cabs a lot. So I think it's I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah. So I suppose that brings us up to now, because I've up until now only really worked with two notes, and I kind of shied away from doing traditional impulse responses, because if you want to sell them as a pack, you've got to do loads of variations, and it can become soul destroying quickly. But because you had taken the time to go through and find what worked for you, and then worked with the sounds that you had, it made real sense for me, because it was like, I found these sounds, these are where I want the mics to be on which cabs, can you do the thing? And I was just like, yes, I can do that thing.
And the thing was done.
It was. And for me, then it's quite simple, because all I have to do is get either a guitar head with a load box or an amp sim, feed that through the real cab while I'm getting the mics right until it sounds great. Then I press a few buttons and do the whole sine wave sweep IR crazy whoop kind of thing. Right. And that spits out as a file. And then I can just send that over and go, there.
Yeah, or now, I mean, now I can send you the preset in native, and you can load it up and you can hear it. I mean, I can send you a raw track and say, here's what I recorded, here's what it sounds like with wall of sound, here's the preset. You run it through and see if it sounds the same. It's so, I mean, such a to me, I feel like it's just like such a smart way to do it, and and we're just living in such an amazing age or time to be a guitar player that you can do stuff like this, right? And then and I had a couple of folks that I trust that, here's the thing, people you become friendly with will always tell you if something's great. They have a hard time telling you if something sucks.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of friends that whose ears I trust, that I shot out a preset or two to kind of just beta, and bless their hearts, they still went and bought the packs afterwards. But they would give me the straight dupe. They would tell me, like, dude, this sounds like crap, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, in being that we both have an online presence, people, we're fortunate enough to be in a situation where people will take our word for it. Someone will take my word for it if something sounds good, right?
Yeah.
I demo all kinds of, sometimes very expensive stuff, and folks will ask me, ask Mike Fortin, how many emails, I was answering from my Fortin Catley demo from NAMM. I mean, my videos sold, $3,800 amps, confirmed. So people trust me, and for me to put my name on something and be like, oh God, I was terrified to finally upload those presets, just because, that scrutiny that comes on you from being an online personality. So it was really important for me that they sound good and that people would actually give me some honest, good feedback. So I'm really pleased with how they sound. I think they track fantastically. They sound great solo. They sound great through a power cab. They sound great through, the return of an amp, push coming through a guitar cab. Any way you use these things, they sound phenomenal. So I think we're onto something good.
Absolutely. So, we're going to leave a link in the description to find those on the Line 6 Marketplace. Jeremy, if you want to find me the best link to get us right to the right place, I'll put that in the description right at the top.
Will do.
And it's going to be exciting to see how many people pick that up and make some great sounds with that.
Yeah, more importantly, I'm very excited for folks to leave some feedback too. Like again, you want to know, what are you digging? What are you not digging? I take a very simple approach when I build a preset. I set it up like I would set up something in the real world. Some of these guys, they make presets and they're just crazy routing, and they've got, split paths where the delays are being affected by one thing, and they're using, split crossovers for one frequency band. Like, look, man, if you wouldn't do that at a gig, if I wouldn't do it at a gig, I wouldn't do it, on the preset. So I want the presets to be accessible. I want people to be able to look at them and just kind of get at a glance, like, okay, I know what this is going to do. I know if I push the thing, it's going to make that happen, right? Just good core tones for people to get out and start playing and start recording and having fun, because it should be fun. It should be fun. It should be easy.
Absolutely. So, yeah, if you guys haven't checked out Jeremy's YouTube channel, then I'm going to leave a nice little picture of his lovely channel right at the end of this video, and of course there's going to be a link next to that Line 6 Marketplace thing. So I think we've gone on for quite long enough. Our viewers must be getting tired by now. So thank you so much for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It was a blast.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll do this again at some point soon.
For sure.
And maybe it'll be 3 or 4 of us, because we have planned, just to let the viewers know, we have some roundtables planned where we're going to be getting people from different sections of the industry, and we're going to ask some big, hard-hitting questions. So that's, over the next few months, we've got definitely confirmed Howard Benson wants to come on the show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Joey Sturgis should be coming on as well.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to be talking in that video... Come on, brain. This is what happens after an hour and a half of podcasting, that your brain starts to fall out of your ear.
Sure.
But yeah, we're going to be talking about the state of the industry and what we can do to improve and change the industry. There are also going to be people from the hardware side of the industry in that conversation.
Nice.
So it's not just producers and plug-in guys. It's going to be people who are actually making the physical stuff as well.
Very cool.
And then, we've got some big plans coming after. If that's successful, and it will be, then that's the hope. Then, awesome. There's so much more coming. So, flip back to that camera. And so, let's just sign off. I'm Adam Steele for Hot Pole Studios.
Jeremy Varao, Dunkys and Demos.
And this has been Hot Pole Position. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and we'll see you 8 p.m. UK next week on Thursday. See you then.
See you.